I don't think that's right. I think that's completely wrong, because when I'm maintaining my rating, I'm maintaining my rating basically by not playing the best players in the world. I'm basically incentivized to do silly things that are what they are. Okay, let's listen to this.
Interview many players, and one
it's
very
good now?
interesting
Okay.
interview was with Hikaru Nakamura, where he spoke about his ambitions of the candidates. And there is a rating spot in the candidates which Hikaru talked about that it's very likely, or he's one of the favorites to get it, because it's an average of 6 months, and he intends to play some local events, not so strong events, and then maintain his rating about 2800 and get that spot. And even though it's going to help him reach the candidates, he was like, I'm not very happy with the fact that FIDE keeps this spot. I also mentioned that this spot, FIDE keeps it for hoping that Magnus will return back to the cycle. So I wanted to know your thoughts on this.
So for anybody who wants context on this, the first thing that needs to be said about this is that basically my view about chess, it's very straightforward. I think that as far as qualifying for the candidates or everything with chess, it should be straightforward. It should be basically you do it literally by rating. So for example, you take the top 8 players in the world by rating and they play in the candidates, and that's that. Or you have no rating spot at all. I've long believed that. I know, of course, people are going to say that, like, look, you're saying this now because it benefits you, and then in the future, it won't have any impact on me directly. But I believe for a long time there should be no rating spot, and it started, I would say, with the Ding thing that happened 2 candidate cycles ago. A lot of people were unhappy with how he got the games playing in China. Last time it was arguably much worse when you had Ali Reza playing these matches and then playing this open in France, where he played, I think, a couple 1600s. Ultimately, he did have to play a real player. He played Godakamsky, the famous freaking legend, and he did beat him towards the end of the tournament to get 7 out of 7. But a lot of people were very upset with what Ding did. They were in many ways more upset with what happened with Ali Reza. And now you have the same situation occurring once again. And that is just not how it should be. My belief is strong. Basically, just do it straight up by rating. You have something like 6 players by rating, maybe 2 players from whatever else or something like that, or 8 players by rating. Straight up, just do it that way. Have decay in the rating system, and that's how it goes. I do believe that, actually. I strongly believe that. What is the downside of having a rating spot? The downside is that basically people can game the system. You can game the system, and it's been gamed 2 times in a row. I'm going to be the 3rd person to game it. I'm not going to pretend and say that it's not true. That's how it is. I mean, that's exactly how it is. Now, to be fair, in my case, I did play very well in 2 tournaments, specifically the American Cup and Norway Chess, against the absolute best players in the world to maintain my ranking. But nonetheless, I don't really think that this is how it should be. I don't think it's how it should be. But let's see what Emil says.
My plan is pretty simple. It's gotten the huge, we're sorry, Magnus. Here's your chance to play the candidates and become world champion again if you're really interested. And I don't think there's any other reason that they have the rating spot. I think it's literally on the off chance that Magnus wakes up tomorrow and suddenly he decides that he wants to play classical chess seriously again. And I think from my general view, it's a FIDE, for whatever reason, they can't get over the fact that Magnus has moved on from classical chess and he has no interest. So I'm very much against it, and I think it should not have been there before. We've already seen some issues with Ding Loren and Ali Reza.
I mean, I literally say exactly what I said here, so I'm gonna skip ahead. This is exactly what I said, literally right here.
And I'll get to 40 games, and that's that. So I don't necessarily think it's great, but I think that FIDE continues to make mistakes as it relates to the candidates tournament, and this whole issue with the rating spot. There shouldn't be a rating spot. They should just accept that Magnus has moved on. And then beyond that, if they're going to have a rating spot, you have to have better rules. Because, like I said, Ding Loren, the way he got in, a lot of people were skeptical. A lot of people didn't like what Ali Reza did. And now I'm going to pretty much be able to coast in, barring something horrible. And it's a problem with the system. I also
make
okay, here we go.
Statements even in good faith, but not knowing the facts.
I don't. Okay, so it's funny because I had a conversation with Emil. Now Emil just says this. Like, this is hilarious, by the way. I don't know the facts. Like, I mean, Emil here, it's incredibly condescending on the one hand. Like, it's incredibly condescending. Emil here is basically acting like I haven't been in chess for the last 30 years and I don't actually know what the process of qualifying is to tournaments. I'm fully aware of the rating spot. I know that this is not the first time that it exists, but the fact is FIDE has been moving in a direction where it's like they're trying to encourage players to play more and more, and there's no actual reason to have it. So it's like, it's really, really condescending, and like, it doesn't just apply to me, it also applies to like Levy, for example, or others, where it's just, there's just this smugness, and it's really annoying to hear, because he's not the only person who's been around for a long time. Many of us have been in chess for a very, very long time.
And of course, he has a bigger platform, and that's very difficult to refute him from a smaller platform. But that's very.
Oh, I love this part, by the way. I love this. This is actually pretty funny. So like it's like this is really funny. Like so Emils he's trying, like, why is he doing this? It just makes no sense. I mean, it just makes no sense at all. Like, it's difficult to refute from a smaller platform. Like, it's literally complaining. It's at the end of the day, it comes back to the same issue that we saw before. And I'm going to sneeze, so give me 1 second. Excuse me. Sorry about that, you guys. But it comes back to the whole thing. It's like, you know, there were complaints about, like, why you know, why is Levy so big? Why is Levy covering this, covering that? Why is Levy doing this? And it's just kind of, it comes back to the same problem, which is that, you know, there's a lot of jealousy and everything else going on. It's really sad to see. It is. It's really quite sad to see. But let's keep going.
Okay, he says that we do it for Magnus, but it's absolutely illogical because this rating spot has been for years. I mean, it always has been there. Actually, you know, there was a wild card were removed. There was the rating spot always. And there was always actually there used to be two ratings.
Yes. Yes.
Now,
yes.
If it were,
and now there's one big problem though, and this is what Emil's not going to hit upon, and what Emil's not going to hit upon, and how FIDE is behind the times, is that players are not as active as they once were. There is a big situation where people do not play as much. This was all completely moot prior to the pandemic, when everybody was playing every tournament in the world. But if you look at the world from 2019 to, let's just say, 2022 and beyond, most players are playing a lot less classical chess than they did prior to the pandemic. And that's what Emil is completely missing here, unless he brings it up, is that people don't play as much. Ali Reza plays very, very few classical tournaments. I play very few tournaments. Magnus plays very few tournaments. Wesley So plays very few tournaments. People are not playing as much classical chess as they did prior to the pandemic, and that is exactly what Emil's missing in this whole argument that he's bringing up. Yeah, I have an allergy, but this guy starts talking, starts sneezing. I mean, but he's just wrong, because what he's missing here, the fundamental problem with what Emil is saying, is he's missing the way that chess has changed since the pandemic, because the top players do not play consistently. If you go to 2018, 2019, Magnus was playing the full Grand Chess Tour. I was playing the full Grand Chess Tour. All the top players were playing a lot of classical chess, and they were playing every tournament that existed. The world changed, and players are not as active as they once were. And that's the biggest point that is completely missed here, and why trying to use the past as a reference point to today, it doesn't work. It does not work. It doesn't work. It's just that simple. Because the player, even Nepo plays like what, one tournament a year? Like that's the thing. Nobody plays the way that they once did. So this argument would be completely fine if people were active, but the top players are not active. Most top players now are playing a lot less. They are. Why does activity matter? Because the thing is, if people are able to sit on the ratings, then they can do exactly what I'm doing, where you play a couple of tournaments a year, and that's all you need to do to qualify. That's not how it should be. That's the exact reason I argue there should be no rating spot, because in my opinion, the rating system these days, it encourages you to not play. You're encouraged to not play that much. And that's basically the point, is that what Emil misses here, and I'm sure he's not going to say this, is that the world of chess, classical chess specifically, is not what it was in 2019, because the absolute top players are not playing classical tournaments every single month the way that they were prior to the pandemic. End of story.
For Magnus,
yes.
We would
also, someone asked about rating decay. I said this before. There should be rating decay. I don't think it's a world where, say, Anand can play 2 games a year and maintain his rating. I don't think I should be able to play 2 games a year for the next 10 years and keep my rating over 2,800. I don't think that's how it should be. I think there should be decay where if you're an active player, your rating does go down. I do believe that very, very strongly. I've been saying that since 2022.
Limited that if you are number 1 in the world, you could qualify by rating. What the regulation says is that if you're either number 1 or number 2 in the world. So someone could actually allege that we did it for Magnus or Hikaru in this case, because why we did leave it 1 or 2? I'll explain you the logic.
Well, the fact is that Magnus is always going to be number 1 by a big margin. Like, Magnus is always going to be number 1 by 30 plus points. Always. Like Magnus is always going to be number 1. Always be number 1.
In last cycle, it wasn't like that. If you didn't qualify from other ways, the highest rated player who didn't qualify by other path can go. That's the way Firouzja qualified. You remember, it was not very kosher the way he he made it into, but still he qualified
Okay.
from 6, I think from number 6 in the world or something like that. But then we thought it's unfair, because why we preserve this rating spot? Because we want that a player who is clearly amongst world best should be in the candidates. Top 8 players. So we wanted to pick. But we decided, okay, probably we shouldn't go all the way down and to look who is number 6 or number 7, because
you know what's funny about this though, actually, is that Emil basically says what I said. He basically says that the way that Alireza got in wasn't kosher, which he's basically saying it wasn't right. So if it wasn't right and he's admitting it wasn't right, then something has to change though. That's the problem. And I think it comes back to what I said, that the big problem is that many top players, they do not play the amount of classical games of chess they played before, and they have not since the pandemic. Whether it's myself, even Levon, for example, I don't think Levon does either. It's like Levon, Wesley, myself, Nepo, Magnus, even Fabiano's playing a lot less too. So all the top guys are playing a lot less, which is exactly why I think that it's a big problem. It's a big problem.
Not exactly. Maybe the difference is too small, and maybe it's more logical to avoid someone who was close to qualifying via other passes. So we limited it to
right. Actually, though, here's exactly the problem with what he says. For anybody who's watching this, when he says qualifying via other passes, the working assumption is that everybody's going to try to qualify every way possible. That everyone's going to try to play every single tournament, which would have been true in 2019, but it is not true in the modern world in 2025. What he says, I actually don't have a problem with this. If he were talking about if the world were the way that it was before the pandemic, but it is not the way that it was before the pandemic. That's exactly the point. It's not like that anymore. So this whole point about like trying to qualify, people aren't going to try to qualify. It's the assumption is just wrong on his end. It's just wrong.
2 best in the world, because if you are in number 2 in the world, it would not be good for candidates tournament to run without number 2 in the world. That's a very simple logic. So once again, it had nothing to do with Magnus. We had no hopes that Magnus would return, and why would he return?
By the way, I will tell you guys that I'm very skeptical. I'm very skeptical about this part, just because I believe there's a strong push to try and get Magnus to play the FIDE World Rapid and Blitz in Doha at the end of the year. So I will just add that little bit of tea that I believe there's a strong push to try and get him to play that event. So I don't completely agree with this point about why would he return, because they want him to play the World Rapid and Blitz in I think it's in Doha and Qatar at the end of the year. So that's my one little bit of tea that I will drop.
Now, and once again, why would it be 2? What we said, that Magnus would lose 50 points and then he would want to return? What? I mean, it's just
but see, the point is, like, I'll also give you guys one other big bit of tea. I mean, I'll give you one other big bit of tea, honestly, which is that the reality is Magnus can draw sponsors like no one else can. For FIDE, even if they don't like Magnus, even if you know there are all these disagreements and whatever, if they can get Magnus to play a tournament, that is going to help them with sponsorship money that they will not be able to get otherwise. So it's not actually a joke. Like when Emil's here trying to say that this, the fact is, if Magnus plays, they can get sponsorship money they literally cannot get without Magnus. So it's not actually a joke at all to think that they desperately want him back. Because they do want him back. It would help them raise money a lot easier than the current situation they're in. Like it's just not a joke at all.
Totally logical. And it's not the first time that Hikaru makes factual statements without knowing facts.
I never said it was a fact. I never said it was a fact. That's my opinion. That's my opinion about why they're doing it. When did I say it was a fact?
Introduced the FIDE circuit thing, he immediately said, well, what is stupid system? I would go to some random open and
yes.
win it and have 2900 performance there and so on. And only then to realize that basically you cannot earn many points in a week tournament in it. Simply he didn't read the rules. I have a feeling that here he also maybe he read the rules, but he didn't notice or didn't remember that it was not
this is funny.
Anyone, and it was not for number 1. It was just for 2 players, and it's logical. Look,
but the fact is, again, of course I'm aware of what the system is. This is just like this is taking something completely different and trying to equate it, which is kind of sad to see. But what I would say broadly about this topic, broadly about like the top two players, is that, you know, Fabiano is qualified from the FIDE circuit. Why does he get the rating spot as number 2? Why does he get the rating spot as number 2? He should get the FIDE circuit spot. He should not get the rating spot if he's number 2. Like that's kind of a little bit disingenuous from Emil, because of course I know exactly what these rules are. A FIDE circuit, I believe, was a little bit different the very first year that they had it. I do believe that it was slightly different, where they didn't have the point system specifically based on tournament performance, if I'm not mistaken. But I could be wrong on that. But still, yeah. Do I bring sponsors? No. I hate to break to you guys. Magnus brings sponsorship that no one else brings. Not me, not Levy, nobody. Like, I'm not joking when I say that. But let's keep going.
As Hikaru,
there's just no need to make it personal.
I mean, he should be in a tournament where top players,
no, that's wrong.
Players.
That's completely wrong, though. That's the point. I should not be in a tournament where I can play one. I should not be in the candidates if I play 2 series tournaments a year. That's kind of the thing that's crazy. Actually, it's like I'm basically arguing against something that's in my interest because it's fundamentally wrong. Like, I do believe it's wrong. I do not think that it's right that I should be able to play like the American Cup, play Norway chess, and then just go coast and play little rinky-dink tournaments around the world and get into the candidates. I don't think that's right. I think that's completely wrong, because when I'm maintaining my rating, basically by not playing the best players in the world. I'm basically incentivized to do silly things that are what they are. You should have to, yeah, exactly. I should have to prove it. Like, you want to know what it should have been? Of course they can't change the rules now because the rules have been published and they are what they are. But like going forward, it should be that you have to play in tournaments that basically have an average rating of like 2,600 or something. That's what it should be. That's literally what it should be. It should be that you have to play in tournaments with an average of 2,600 rating or something and play 40 games. Then it's fine. But the way it is right now, it's just not right. It's not right. So that's kind of my point, and that's what I find funny is like, in a way, I'm arguing against myself because like I think it's wrong even if it benefits me, but Emil's trying to say something like completely different. But if you weren't making so much money from streaming and investing, wouldn't you be forced to play more tournaments for money? Oh yeah, absolutely. But that's not the reality of the world we live in. And also, frankly, I would say that's not the world we live in with a lot of players. If you look at the Indian players, a lot of them have big sponsorships now. You look at Prague, you look at Gukesh, you look at Arjun. Arjun, I think, is getting, is it $300,000 a year from Quantbox? Prague has big sponsorship with Adani. Gukesh obviously is a world champion. You look at a lot of players. You look at Fabiano, for example. He has an esports deal with Team Liquid. Like, a lot of players now have individual, or not individual, I should say private sponsorships. So they don't need to play as much as they once did. So it's not purely just like pandemics what changed it, but the fact is a lot of players aren't incentivized the way they were before because there is a lot more money out there objectively. So that's kind of like the another very important point. And overall, I think the big thing that's wrong with this is that Emil's not adjusting to the times. He's not realizing that in 2025, many players don't just play every tournament. And even people who are not qualified, I'll give you another example. There's a player like Jan-Krzysztof Duda. I do not believe that he's currently supposed to play in the Grand Swiss. He might be playing the FIDE World Cup, but he's not qualified for the candidates, and he's skipping the Grand Swiss, which is one of the only ways that he can qualify. So it's not just like people like myself. I mean, there are a lot of players who are burnt out, or like the times have changed, economics, whatever. And so like that's the problem with this, is that the world we live in, it's not the same world that we lived in 2019.
Here's define who is number 2. Now about the ways to qualify, how legitimate is to, let's put it this way, to play some, as he put it, small opens where there will be one grandmaster and so on. Maybe that could be defined more subtly, more, let's say, to avoid similar situation of when you just basically fulfill your quota, or even in case of necessity, farm 0.8 for each win. This is a player. So I don't say that Hikaru is farming because he has a big gap, but it could have happened. I think here I accept that we haven't been too, let's say, scrupulously closing all the loopholes.
Okay.
You know, when we write these rules, we try to think of top chess players as top chess players, and sometimes
this is, by the way, this is really funny to hear. This is not necessarily about Emil, But it's hilarious to me that he's saying we think of top players as top player. He basically is acting like top players are not going to like understand game theory. Like probably the thing that chess players understand better than anything else is literally game theory and understanding when draws are useful, when to game the system, who you take chance against. Like that's literally the number one thing that I would say that I've realized about every other top players. Like when a draw is beneficial to both players, they're going to make a draw, for example. And like this was another one was in this event in Las Vegas. They're in the final round. I think Noterbeck and Sindarov were playing, and they played they tried to play a normal game and eventually got to this bishop endgame. They made a very boring draw because it qualified both of them. Like the number one thing that top chess players are good at is they're very, very good at understanding game theory and where and how to game the system. Just look at Magnus and Nepo in the World Rapid and Blitz. So there was a loophole literally in the regulations that said they play until somebody wins, and they completely took advantage of that. So this is actually funny to hear because top chess players, they're great at game theory. They're great at knowing how to take advantage of whatever the rules are. So I just find it's a little bit amusing in a way.
I mean, we miss this little sort of ways to game the system, and that could happen. I reckon. And
of course, it can happen.
But once again, it has nothing to do with Magnus or trying to please Magnus or to give him an opportunity to give back. It's just the logic suggests that if you are 1 or 2 in the world, you should be playing in
well, I mean, okay, so like in general, like it's pretty tame and mild, but again, the main thing I would say is that you should have to prove that you're there. And I would say Magnus and myself, we play the bare minimum amount of games, and I don't think we necessarily prove it. We prove it in 1 or 2 tournaments a year, but we're not proving it consistently. We aren't. So I think that's pretty much it, right? Or is there more to it?
The FIDE circuit is gaining more and more importance in the cycle of reaching the candidates. Do you think this will continue? Because I saw your tweet where I
think that's about it on me. There's a game between Nepo and Dubov. Yeah, I mean, there are many different things, obviously, but I think at the end of the day, the general principle that I have, the general principle that really needs to be understood by FIDE is that the world we live in today is different than the world of 2019. The young kids, there are many of them like Prague, for example, or Hans or others who will play every tournament under the sun. But there are a lot of top players who will not play every tournament under the sun anymore, and they never will again. And like, you know, as I said, in 2019, I was on the road 280 days of the year. And now I'm on the road. I mean, if I'm being generous, maybe 120 days. If I'm being really generous, maybe 4 months a year, if that. So that's the thing. Hikaru, aren't you as big as Magnus in terms of popularity? When you're trying to reach out to in terms of popularity, yes. When you're trying to reach out to private sponsors, is a little bit different. Emil is actually the CEO. He's basically the president, CEO, whatever you want to call it. He's the boss of FIDE. He is the boss. So that was actually pretty good to cover. Overall, I mean, I didn't love the part about trying to say that I'm saying factual things. Obviously I don't talk to FIDE, but that's my personal view that I think that they are hoping that Magnus will come back and play. And I also think generally what should happen is there should either be all rating spots or no rating spots at all. That's the main bit. So all right, you guys, that's going to do it for this little bit. So let's move on to our next bit and we'll keep going.